Hello, welcome back to another episode of Somewhere Between a Film and TV podcast. I am your host, Daniel Parra. And number one, thank you so much for listening and watching. Number two, if you could please, down below, like, comment, subscribe, comment. What did you think of Nobody 2? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you somewhere between on it? I want to know. But let's go ahead and dive right in. Nobody 2, the sequel to the initial Nobody with Bob Odenkirk. This one is directed by Timo-Tjahjanto, and yes, I did look up how to pronounce that. I believe that's correct. I just watched part of the TED Talk where he was pronouncing his first name. But this is the follow-up to the, I believe, surprisingly successful initial Nobody, where Hutch is in the description it says it's a workaholic assassin. The first one, it was a sort of initial surprise of, who is this person? I'm nobody, it was a whole thing. And describing Nobody 2, what is it about? We'll read the official description really quick. It says workaholic assassin Hutch Mansell takes his family on a much needed vacation to the small tourist town of Plummerville that he was very, very much reminiscent of when he was a kid. He was taken there by Christopher Lloyd, his father, in this. However, he soon finds himself in the crosshairs of a corrupt theme park operator, a shady sheriff, and a bloodthirsty crime boss. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. The first one, I like a lot. I loved it, actually. I remember when it initially had come out, this was COVID era. This was one of the first big releases whenever COVID had initially, there was sort of a, can we go back to theaters? There was a sort of worry about that. And I remember I saw it with a fairly packed crowd whenever it initially come out. And, people were having the time of their lives because it had been a while, and action movies lend themselves to audience response and people, wincing, cheering whenever something very violent would happen. And same thing here as well. I think that what makes these movies work initially a bit more than, let's say, I think that the John Wick movies are better than these are. But they're going to fall to comparison simply because they are also made by, I believe the studio's 87 North. This was, of course, story written by Derek Kolstad, produced by David Leitch. It's the team, the team that is behind basically why action movies are filmed the way they are right now. These long takes, these highly orchestrated, coordinated action scenes. Ballerina, loved it so much when it came out earlier this year. And here, these have a very more overt sense of humor about them. I think that John Wick and Ballerina are funny to an extent, but they have a bit more of a low-key, dry humor about them, where these are definitely a bit more straightforward leaning. And let's go ahead and get into actual official thoughts here. Did I love this movie? Did I hate it? Or am I somewhere between on it? And I want to say that I don't want this to be taken as a negative. I am somewhere between on this, but in the sense that I liked this movie a lot. I didn't love it. I liked it a fair amount. I think I couldn't help it. The entire time, I just kept thinking, something is missing. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if maybe the trailer showed too much, which is something that I talk about maybe too much on here. But I just kept thinking, well, I'm enjoying myself. This is good. I'm having a good time. It's fun. It's funny. But there was always an air of, I don't know what it's missing though. Maybe an additional action scene, maybe an additional whatever it may be. But let's get into the positives of this first. Bob Odenkirk is one of the best actors working alive. I'm going to say that right off the bat. He's one of my favorite actors ever. Better Call Saul, a masterpiece. He is so incredible. This movie, I think, is anchored by performances that maybe are, I don't want to say the word overqualified, but people that know how to sell something. And Bob Odenkirk, I'm very aware, can convey like 6 different emotions at once, which, of course, when you have an actor of his caliber, is able to sell this idea that the entire concept of these movies, awesome. it's sort of the inverse of John Wick, where it's like everybody whispers, "Who's that guy?" Like, we know who this is. He arrives, you know who that is. These are more like, why is it that this average looking guy is so qualified to do all of these things? And that's a point that's made a few separate times in this movie with Colin Hanks' character, where they're like, I do not think that this is just some tourist. He's absolutely more than that. But I really like that about him, and I like his performance a lot because he's able to sell this kind of the entire concept that I'm going to say this right now. You know how wish fulfillment was a thing for kids back in the early 2000s with like spy stuff, Spy Kids, and all of those things, Agent Cody Banks, where a kid would be like, yeah, I can be a spy. I'm 9 years old. And here, to me, this is kind of the equivalent of if John Wick was like, I gotta take out the Nike Pegasus Monarch shoe, you know, the big like white one with the chunky sole, or like my New Balances and my jorts, and I gotta wear a Hawaiian shirt, and wish fulfillment of like, oh my god, like I'm a kid, I get to be a spy. I'm 10 and I have the secret goggles that I got from McDonald's when Spy Kids 2 came out. I had those. And here it's kind of like, all right, gotta finish mowing the lawn, gotta finish doing the edges for the lawn as well, and then I'm gonna go and save my family while I'm on a family vacation. It's funny because we talk about dad movies, and this is very much a dad wish fulfillment movie, where it's like, you know how there was that whole joke earlier on in the year, or maybe it was a serious debate, depending on who you asked, if, what was it, 100 people could fight one gorilla? But here it's like, if you were to ask a dad, if you were on vacation and then the mob was like starting to take over your vacation, could you save your entire family? They'd probably also say yes, you know? But it's just funny to watch someone, specifically someone like Bob Odenkirk, do a lot of these action set pieces while he's wearing those like beach shirts that you wear that dry off really fast, with the Hawaiian shirt over it, with like the swim shorts and all that. It was just very much reminding you of like just a dad, you know? And that's the point, in that he's like been wanting a break. And I liked the setup for this as well. It reminded me of that, you know, sometimes whenever movies do this, like the montage where things are, you know, very routine, very samey over and over. And I'm kind of a sucker for juxtaposition, where something really intense will be happening, but they're kind of just treating it like, this is another day. I've been doing this for too long. I got to kill 100 guys today. And that's very much the kind of sense of humor that this movie has. I really liked that about it. I liked when, I wouldn't call it campy necessarily, but it has a very on the nose sense of humor about itself. Because if a movie like this, I feel, were to take itself a little bit too seriously, then we're in a whole other realm of having an issue with stuff like that. But I think that's even more indicative in the sense that when Sharon Stone's character is introduced, she's like, you know, level 100 in terms of the over-the-topness that she's going for. It almost feels like she's nearly in a different movie. Do you remember when, I guess I wasn't alive, so I couldn't even say do you remember, but we're kind of going back to that sort of evocative feeling of whenever 90s action movies were coming out, and they were 90 minutes. This is 90 minutes total. And there's one or two action scenes that you're like, yeah, that was cool as hell. And then we like, you know, wrap it up, and it was a good time. Like Cannon, you know, Commando, something like that. We're going back to that, where it's like, you know, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a very good time. And then, you know, you kind of don't forget about it, but, you know, you're going to see this on TNT in like a year and be like, oh, awesome. They're doing double feature where it's like Nobody 1 and Nobody 2 starting at 6 p.m. tonight. Just like that, you know. But in terms of the overall positives, I know that we're all over the place here, but I did genuinely enjoy watching this. Bob Odenkirk, of course, stole the show for me a little bit, even though he's not in it a ton. I would say even underutilized to an extent, is Christopher Lloyd. I loved him in the first one. I remember him being like, when he arrives, it was one of those, it's funny because it's not like, you know, we're not assembling the Avengers or anything, but it's one of those kind of cheer-worthy moments because you get some of the best moments in it. And then in this one, it's the same thing as well, where he like arrives with this like turret thing that he's doing on the water park, which I'm gonna get into how I like that in a second. But it's just funny because Christopher Lloyd really gets to express he's a very funny actor. He's a very funny person. And here he gets to lean into this kind of like when he's first introduced, they do that joke where he's like he's the cool badass guy at the retirement home and all the ladies love him, and he's like walking out with a cigar and his like sunglasses and his bucket hat. It's hilarious. It's very funny. And he ends up disappearing for a while within the movie, just plot reason wise. I don't know if they couldn't get him to do a whole lot, but I liked him a lot in this. I also liked Hutch's wife, which I am blanking on her name. She's in Justice League. Connie Nielsen. Yes. I liked her a lot as well in it, as well as the kids. I liked that the whole crux of why this ends up being something that happens in the first place, the setup, the rising action, is that the kids are at an arcade and, the dad instinct kicks in whenever his son ends up like getting in a fight, and then one of the security guards hits his daughter upside the head. And it's funny because if you know this character based off of the first one, it's why I know that Bob Odenkirk can sell this and why these movies are well written enough that you can identify this. Whenever she gets like smacked upside the head, my audience will like gasp, because at that point we know what this character's initial move is after the fact. And there's this joke they do 2 or 3 times in this that's really, really well set up. And it's this moment where he just cannot help himself. He cannot help but be a violent person. And he walks out. You can see the gears turning in his head. And there's even a moment where like it's like a singular thing that the camera will do where it's like very zeroed in on everything. Like they play with the depth of field where the background will kind of go out of focus. And he like is very much, single-minded, and then turns back around, walks back into the arcade, and then it's a very clever action scene that I loved that utilized the what's it called? I call it the beat 'em off Badgers. It's not what it is, but the whack-a-mole. Yeah, there it is. And he ends up using the hammer to like hit him over the head over and over, like really, really intensely. And I'm a sucker for that. Ballerina did stuff like that a lot, where you use household all around objects to do things. And so if you utilize the economy of your space around whenever you're using an action scene, I think that the creativity amps up by like 100, and it makes you start to wonder, oh my god, what are they going to do next? And that's sort of how it lures you into the action scenes being really involved. And that's by far the standout part of this. That's by far the absolute best thing in this movie, are the overqualified actors' performances and the action scenes. Where I think this movie struggles, if we're going to get into negatives before we get into more positives, is it's barely held together by a plot. I think whenever it stops to do some of the the talking bits, I'm not a person that's like, this is an action movie, what are we doing here, come on. But I do like to have the investing dialogue as well, where I love all of the background mechanics of stuff. I love whenever cartel stuff is utilized in movies. I love the whole like the small town is corrupt and then the cops are in on it. That stuff's super cool. But up until Sharon Stone's involved, the best part of that is easily Colin Hanks' character, which I could not stop thinking about what it would be like if Chet Hanks was in that role instead and doing that like fake accent he has. It was just distracting because there's a moment where Colin Hanks yells and it was just straight Tom Hanks. It was the exact same. And I mean, like, yeah, nepotism baby and all that. And he's good in it. He's good in the movie, I will say that. But it was just distracting to me because I kept thinking about that. Not anyone's fault but Chet Hanks's, though, I think. And so that's just a me thing. And I liked him in it. It was another thing where like oversold it. He's like giving this dramatic performance and then it's contrasted with Sharon Stone a little bit, who feels like, I think that Halle Berry's Catwoman is one of the worst movies ever made. Not Catwoman herself, but like the movie that is surrounding all that is awful, right? But Sharon Stone is one of the hallmarks of like one of the worst things in that. And she is maybe not going hard enough in that movie. And it makes you wonder if in this one she was like, oh, I'm doing a similar thing. Okay, I'm going to actually do it right this time. And she does. I like her performance in this. It's just funny when she's actually partnered with anyone else in a scene that has been in the movie longer, because she's kind of introduced halfway through. And you're like, okay, this is a world of difference in terms of that. I feel like she would have been more at home with Bill Skarsgård's performance in John Wick 4. You know what I mean? Like, he's incredible in that. And those movies are very vibrant personalities. But here, it's kind of like you're supposed to be a bit more low-key on purpose in order to sell the humor a bit more. And maybe that was intentional, just in the sense of contrasting with Bob Odenkirk's really kind of low-key and to an extent introspective performance a little bit. But it's just that this movie's so short. It's like 90 minutes. And don't get me wrong, I mean, in a lot of aspects, that's perfect. Not every movie needs to be 2.5 hours, but then I feel like the actual plot itself suffers, because I liked whenever they were just hanging out on vacation and stuff like that. I honestly, I could have taken more of it as well. I liked the humor that came from that. I liked the characters bonding with each other. And if they were going to make it, a third one of these, which honestly, I hope they do. I liked this movie a lot, and I like this franchise a lot. That maybe put a little bit more, I kind of want to know more about the world that they're in, to an extent. Don't get me wrong, I know that like, oh, it's a Hitman thing. These are by the people that made the John Wick thing. Are they connected? Just wish fulfillment for me is I hope that they are at a point. I just think that would be cool. But the actual action aspects of it are super cool. There's something that's not really addressed, where Bob Odenkirk and RZA are brothers, and still have no idea why. But I like the absolute not a need for explanation for it. And following up with the actual action scenes themselves that I like a lot, if we'll go back to that, I do think that they're super creative. There's a lot of uniquely staged camera work that's done. And one of the best examples I can think of was I said that they do this joke or setup 2 or 3 times. And for me, it never really gets old, where Bob Odenkirk does that thing where he's zoning in, right? And there's one that they do that I like a lot, where he walks into a warehouse that he can easily just walk into for no reason at all. They're even like, how did you even get in here? He's like, the door. And he sees the kidnapped child of the person that owns the water park. And he's like trying his best to ignore it, walk out. But you can hear in the background the audio mixing, like he drives back in. And at first I thought this was going to be kind of like it's like a budget cut thing and it's just meant to be like a joke. But then they actually follow up on the action scene fully. So credits to them, where he pulls back into the frame. Then he walks in, and there's just this stationary view of the warehouse in front of us. And you can hear all of the background fighting stuff, all of the gunshots and the back and forth. And I liked the playfulness of that. Then you see somebody walk out, and then it kind of, pans in, separate cut, where the camera then follows in through the entire action scene that I loved a lot, where you see somebody like hanging off a chain and all that. And it ends up being a really, really just well done and well staged piece of choreography. And I want to shout out Bob Odenkirk. I don't know how much of his own stunts he did, but there seems to be an absolute willingness to be like, well, I got in shape for this. I want to commit to this. Because if you don't know the story about the first one, about how him being in shape for these movies at all kind of saved his life, is really cool. And I like that there's an older man that's taking center stage as an action centerpiece in terms of leading a franchise. He's older. He's older, and he's doing all of these things himself, and I think that's really cool. Same goes for Keanu Reeves, who admittedly to me looks younger than Bob Odenkirk does, but Bob Odenkirk, giving the full-on committed performance in this, I think is awesome, and I think it's really cool that they do get to do that. And the actual setup of the action scenes themselves, I like that a lot. My favorite one, of course, they do the thing where the third act's got to get all big, but I was waiting for them to do this, and I was genuinely going to be not very happy if the water park wasn't utilized to any extent, because there are movies where they set up like, okay, so they're going to do something with this, and then they just don't, and you're like, why? What did we do that for? And so here, the entire third act basically takes place in this like Home Alone setup, much like the first one, where there's all these traps set up around them and they're utilizing everything around to their advantage. There's one I like a lot where I was like, all right, immediate half star up, because there's this water slide moment where he slides down, and I was like, okay, so it's just like a quick getaway thing. No, there's a bunch of wooden spikes that come up when a person also follows him down, and they like stab him through his body, and I was like, that's crazy. And then it'll cut to a next shot where like all the blood is coming down through the water. I just thought that was really creative. I just happened to like that a fair amount, like a lot. And RZA has a moment where he's sword fighting in the middle of the woods, and you're like, oh, that's awesome that this is in this movie, where it's kind of a play off of like old martial arts stuff, because I believe RZA can do martial arts, and that was really cool. There was a moment in that I was like, oh, I've seen plenty of old samurai films, and old Kurosawa stuff, but they do the thing where he like moves as fast as possible and cuts the person, and then their head like slides off. I was like, that's really cool. I love that. That was really creative. And he also cuts the gun in half. That's crazy. That's just really cool. I like the world here a lot. But honestly, this movie was pretty short, just in terms of really much discussion. I liked the movie a fair amount, and I absolutely think if you listen to this and you were like, oh, should I see this? I highly recommend it still. I do think that it's very much worth your time. The action is super fun and creative. It's just some of the plot stuff. There's not a semblance of a whole lot of one. And I know some people are like, oh, what are you going to do? Go into Nobody 2 and like expect some like award-winning plot? No, not really. I just kind of wanted more of the thing that they were doing because I liked it. And overall, yeah, I would absolutely want to see another one of these. I like this franchise a lot, but I also will just take Bob Odenkirk being in as many movies as possible. He's just the coolest. He's the best. And if you haven't, for some reason, just offhandedly seen Better Call Saul, it's a perfect show. Watch it. If you were like, I love Breaking Bad, watch that show. It's ridiculous. But overall, I'm going to give this a score. I'm going to go 4 out of 5. I know I said I was somewhere between. I didn't love it, but I did really, really like it. And again, I highly recommend it. Just go in with knowing the fact that it isn't, it's not groundbreaking. It's not going to like blow your mind, but it's a lot of fun. And I liked it a lot. But thank you guys so much for listening and watching. What did you think of Nobody 2? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you somewhere between on it? I want to know. I want to talk about it. And please subscribe. Please comment. Up next, I'm going to learn how to pronounce this because I'm going to see the first one during the week at some point. It's a big deal. It's called Tjahjanto, I think. Don't get mad at me if I pronounce that wrong. I'll promise I'll get it right next week. I'm very excited about it. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that it's a groundbreaking thing that's happening right now, and I want to see it. But for now, thank you guys again so much for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.